Hi there, it's Tracy Kiernan from Step by Step Painting, and this acrylic painting tutorial will show you how to paint spring blooms with acrylics on an 11 by 14 inch canvas. So this is a canvas that I had painted black. You could also buy it pre-painted black or apply one layer of black paint to it and you're good to go. We're going to go over brushes and colors. So I will be using a number 12 bright brush, which is like a 1/2 inch flat brush. I'll be using this number 8 round long brush. This is by the Princeton Velvet Touch, and I love this brush because of the fine tip to it, so you can do thick and thin strokes like in the leaves of this painting. And I'll be using a number 4 round brush. This one is also a Princeton Velvet Touch brush. There is a drawing portion of this tutorial. I'll be showing you how to draw the flowers and the vases, and I used a white chalk pencil for this so that it would show up on the black canvas. If you don't have a white chalk pencil, you can use a regular drawing pencil. You can use a piece of chalk, although the lines might be kind of thick, or you can use a white color pencil. There are 7 colors in this tutorial, and I'll be using Liquitex Basics acrylic paints. So we have Mars Black, Titanium White, Dioxazine Purple, Primary Red, Cadmium Yellow Medium Hue, Light Green Permanent, and Light Blue Permanent. So let's go ahead and get started. So I'm using an 11 by 14 canvas that I've already painted black. I just added 1 layer of Mars Black acrylic paint to it. Great if you have a mess up painting, you just paint over your mess up painting, and you can do this one. So what I'm doing here is I am applying a line at about 2 inches from the bottom of the canvas, and this is a ruler, T-square ruler, and I'm just using my white chalk pencil to draw the line. Again, if you don't have a white chalk pencil, just use any pencil for that. And I'm going to draw the vases and the flowers first, but first I want to kind of find the center of my canvas because I want to kind of be sure I have enough room for flowers, enough room for vase, and none of these vases should be taller than the halfway mark of the canvas. So I just located at 5.5 inches because the canvas is 11 inches high in this format. And I just made a little mark there so that when I draw my vases, I'm not going to make any of them higher than that mark. That'll make sure I have enough room for flowers. This first vase on the far left is kind of like a simple cylinder vase with a little bit of a wide opening. So I'm going to start at the bottom and just kind of sketch the bottom curved line of the vase. If you want to know how wide it is, it's about 2.5 inches wide, but you don't have to use that exact measurement. And then I'm just going to kind of sketch it up, and it's going to kind of go inwards towards the center and then kind of curve outwards. And then the top part is going to go at that 5.5 little inch mark that we made. So that's going to be our tallest vase, or that base can't be taller than that mark. So that opening part is about 3.25 inches wide, and it's flat at the top. So you are welcome to change the shape and design of these vases if you want. Just going back over that and resketching it. And you want to make sure that you're giving yourself enough room that you can fit 3 vases on here, so don't make them too wide. This second one, I'm going to start with kind of like a circle on the bottom. So it's very rounded at the bottom, and then it goes very narrow, kind of inwards at the top. So there's kind of an oval for the opening. And we can kind of make that more of a shape, and then down, kind of sketch it around. And the bottom of that should pretty much line up with the bottom of the vase on the left. So I am making these vases all pretty much the same height. And so this one's going to be a little bit different. I'm going to do kind of this egg shape vase that has a handle. This is going to be pretty much like an egg shape. So it's a little bit narrow at the bottom, and then it kind of goes wide towards the top. And then we're going to have kind of a smaller opening, so 2 little curved lines, and then this part maybe flat at the top. And then we can sketch a handle on this. I'm just going to do this kind of curved line that attaches towards the top. It's not really centered on the base, but it's more towards the top. Sketch this, try to make it a little bit more symmetrical, and then it's going to have a bottom. So I'm actually going to take my ruler and kind of make sure these are all lined up. So I have a little bit of a gap down here. So I'm actually going to make kind of a little stand for it. So that's my bottom part of the vase. So this chalk pencil does erase with a regular eraser if you need to erase your lines. And then I'm going to sketch my flowers. So we have a lily of the valley flower over here on the left. I'm going to start by drawing a very large leaf, kind of wide at the bottom, a little bit narrow on the edge, and the edging of these leaves are a little bit wavy. So see how I'm doing kind of a wavy line for the edge. The second leaf is going to be overlapping or underneath the leaf on the right. So then I'm going to start sketching these little lilies. So these are little upside down flowers, or flowers that are facing downwards. So it's like a little rounded shape, and then 3 little pointed shapes that kind of curve outwards with a little center triangular shape pointing down, and then 1 little curved line attached to it for the stem. Then I'm going to do another stem. So this one's going to come out of here and curve downwards. There's going to be 1 little lily attached to this, so a curved kind of circular shape, and the little pointed parts, 3 little pointed ends, and then we can do another one. So I'm going to do a stem and the flower, and then they remind me of like little squids. So curve, little curved points, and then we might have room for maybe 1 more over here on the left. We can squeeze another little flower in. This center flower is going to be an iris, so I'm going to do a stem that kind of sways a little bit towards the left, and then I'm going to do the iris petals. I'm going to do one that's kind of large and narrow, but kind of like a wavy edge to it. And then there's going to be 2 that are kind of more pointed, but pointing downwards. These leaves are kind of, or petals are kind of falling down, pointing down. And then another one that's kind of more the style of the first one I did. And then another one, that one's going to overlap the leaf, or lily of the valley leaf. Then I'm going to do 2 leaves, sort of narrow, long, pointed leaves, both coming out of the opening of the vase. Okay, next I'm going to draw tulips. So let's do 3 tulips. And so these are really fun. You can do tulips 2 different ways. So I'm going to do, I usually start with like an egg drop shape that's or a teardrop shape that's pointed on the left, and then overlap another one on the right, and then we see the little behind piece that's behind those 2 petals. And then the little stem, a little bit wider as it attaches to the tulip, and then it goes, so 2 lines down and then attaches to the vase where it goes inside the vase. So I'm going to draw it another way this time. So this time I'm going to do a center kind of teardrop shape, and then there's going to be the petals behind it. So this one's going to be behind it, so a little curved and outwards line, little curved kind of pointing outwards line. So it's like a different view of the tulip. So those are like the 2 different ways. There's other ways you can draw them too. And I'll do another one with the same style as what I just drew. So you're welcome to draw more tulips if you want more than 3 tulips in this vase. So this one, I'm going to change the height of it. This one's going to be a little bit higher, but same style, starting with that little teardrop shape, and then the 2 little pieces behind it. And our stem, we'll have to kind of twist this one and make it go around and attach to the vase. Tulip leaves are really fun. They're very long, narrow, pointed leaves. So we can kind of have fun with this composition. We can kind of make leaves overlapping, pointing downwards. These ones are mostly going up. I'm going to do 3 leaves. And there is my drawing. So I'm going to actually get an eraser and erase our line that's overlapping our vases, even though paint will be covering this up and we won't be seeing this in the end. But you can just use a regular eraser for erasing. And so we're done with the drawing portion, and we are going to do the painting portion next. So let's start I'm going to start by painting all the flowers first, and then I'll do the vases after the flowers. So I will be using a lot of these 2 brushes for painting the flowers. This is the 8 round brush that has that nice point to it, and the number 4 round brush. And I'm going to load my brush or my palette with the colors light green permanent, titanium white, and light blue permanent. I'm going to start on the left with the lily of the valley, and I'll be painting the large leaf first. So on your palette with your number 8 round brush, let's mix white and green together. So when we're doing black canvas paintings, you want to make sure that you're using a lot of titanium white mixed with your color. That's going to allow your color to show up bright and opaque against the black background. Some acrylic paint colors are opaque already, but a lot of times they're not, so we have to use the white. So what I did here was adding the white to the green, and that is how it's showing up nice and bright. I also added Mars Black to my palette, so we'll be using that for a little bit of shading later. But right now I am just filling this leaf in over here on the right, using my brush to kind of outline that shape and fill it in solid. So I'm going to take a little bit of this white and kind of make it a little bit brighter over here on the right side of the leaf, blending that in onto the canvas. And I'm kind of waving my brush a little bit as I'm painting this in because the leaf is a little bit wavy. So I want to wave my strokes, paint strokes, to kind of get that look of the lily of the valley leaf. So I'm taking more green, filling this in, solid. So you want to press kind of firmly on the brush, especially in the middle part, but then on the edges you can kind of use more of the tip of the brush to get your, especially on the point of the leaf, you can use more of the tip of the brush to get that really to go to a point. So next I want to do the leaf on the left, and I'm actually going to add a little bit of Mars Black to this. I'm going to take a little chunk of the green and grab a little bit of that black, just a tiny bit is all that's needed, and that's going to darken your green, and it's going to get this to be a little bit darker over here on the left. I did not rinse my brush, by the way, so there's still a little bit of white on my brush. So over here on the left, I'm allowing this to be darker so that it will stand out and look a little bit shadowy because it's behind the leaf on the right. A little bit of water in that brush just to kind of loosen that color a little bit. And I'm going to go back to that lighter green. So we have that shadow color that's going to look shadowy next to that leaf. I'm going to get this lighter green color and just allow that to kind of blend in with the rest of the green. Again, kind of waving my brush in there is going to give it that kind of lily of the valley leaf look. A little bit of white in there just to get some color variation. And over here on the edging, and just kind of blend it in. I don't want to lose that dark shadow color. Get a little bit more white just on the tip of the brush, and over here I'm just going to add maybe a few loose lighter color lines, but not blended all the way, to give it more of that wavy texture look on the leaf. I can do the same over here to the other leaf with the white, just letting it loosely kind of blend in with that green, but giving it that wavy texture. Go back with a little bit more of this lighter green, and I'm going to just redefine the edge of this leaf over here. Make sure that edge is brighter and stands out. Next, I'm going to paint the stems of our lilies. I'm actually going to loosen up this light green permanent color a little bit, twist my brush because I know I'm going to be painting these small lines. I'm just using the tip of this brush to paint that line, so that stem line. This is just the light green permanent. So you may notice light green permanent is kind of an opaque color as it is, so we don't really have to add a lot of white to it. However, if you're using this color and it's not showing up for whatever reason, you can add a little bit of white to your color. That helps get that to stand out. Added a little bit of that darker color to some of these little stems over here. And then we can paint our little white flowers. So when you're ready to paint the flowers, we're going to rinse our brush off. I'm actually going to switch to the number 4 round brush, a smaller brush for these small flowers. But I can actually still use the 8 round if I need help with like the points of the flowers, because this number 4 round brush does not have a fine point to it. You can also use like a little tiny detail brush if you need help for painting the little points as well. So titanium white is the only color I have loaded on this number 4 round brush, and all I'm going to do is just paint these in, starting with that little circle shape of the flower, and then I'm going to use my 8 round to help with those little points. You can pinch my bristles to get those bristles to be nice and gathered so that I can use the tip of that brush. I'm going to use the tip of that brush to paint the little pointed parts of the lily of the valley flowers. So I'm basically going to repeat this for each of the flowers. Then I'm going to add a little bit of blue shading to the very top of each of the flowers, well, the part that's attached to the stem. So take the number 4 round brush and add a little bit of light blue permanent to it without rinsing the brush. You can even kind of mix it together on your palette a little bit, but I'm just basically just kind of like dragging this blue down from the top down so it's a little bit blue and shaded right at the top of the rounded part of each of the flowers. Next, I'm going to add a second layer of paint to the stems. So I'm going to rinse both of the brushes off. We can use the 8 round or the 4 round, whichever one you liked better for the stems. I'm going to use the 8 round and load that in, some white and the light green permanent color, and just go back over the stems. I'm actually going to kind of make the end of these stems a little bit whiter so that they attach to the ends of each of the flowers. So this is showing up lighter. So I did the darker color earlier, but I'm going back with the lighter color so that it shows up a little bit better. So just on the ends of these, that stem just kind of cups open and attaches to the flower. Next, I'm going to paint the iris. So let's load our palette with Dioxazine Purple. And Dioxazine Purple is not going to show up very well on the canvas, the black canvas. So we got to mix it with white. So go ahead, take some titanium white on your palette. It's about equal amounts, maybe a little bit more purple than white, maybe 2 purple, 1 white proportion. But you need that white in there to get this to show up. So I'm going to start. This is the number 4 round brush, and I'm just going to start by painting one of these petals. But I want to make this a little bit varied. So I'm going to have it actually be lighter in the center part. And I'm going to take the darker color and kind of wiggle my brush on the end and drag that darker color towards the center. So I'm going to go back and add some more dark in here. So dark on the end. I'll wiggle the brush to give you that wavy texture of the petal on the end and drag it in. That's going to allow your petal to be lighter in the middle and darker on the end. So I'm going to do this again. We can do these kind of pointed down petals here. So same thing. You start with your lighter color, grab your darker color, add that dark on the end. I'm kind of waving my brush to give it that kind of wavy look of the iris petal. So I'm going to do this to each of these petals. Start with my lighter color, kind of pressing down, a lot of pressure on that brush, and darker color on the end. Kind of wave my brush, let it kind of blend in with the center. And I'm going to do this again for these petals. So this one is going to be overlapping the lily of the valley leaf. Just make sure your green is dry before you start overlapping it. But same thing, kind of wavy end to it. Make sure you're using that white so that it stands out lighter in the center. I'm just kind of dragging my brush and letting that kind of blend on the canvas. And then I'm going to do one more petal. I'm going to take a little bit more of this white, kind of drag it in the center because we want lighter in the center. Later on, after this purple dries, we'll go back and add our yellow pieces in the center, little pops of yellow. But right now, I'm going to just take more of that titanium white and just kind of drag more white in the center of each of those petals. And that's going to have to dry before we can add our yellow. Go back with a darker color on the ends of each of these petals. Kind of wiggling my brush on the end to give it that kind of wavy texture on the end, and then dragging that darker color in the center. So there's the first part of our iris. And let's go ahead and paint the leaf. So I'm going to make kind of a different shade of green here so that it looks different from our lily of the valley leaf. So I'm going to actually add some black into this green. So taking black and green, and I'm going to take some of the white too. So I'm just grabbing some titanium white. So it's kind of a grayish green. A little bit of water to kind of water it down, just so that this color shade of green is different from the lily of the valley. So it helps to create some variation in our green. And we'll make the tulip leaves look different too in terms of that type of green. So just using the number 4 round brush, I'm just putting pressure on the brush for the thick part of the leaf. And then you kind of release the pressure. So thick pressure, and then you release the pressure when you get to the point for your thin part of the leaf. You can also do this with the 8 round brush. That brush is actually really helpful for that, because then when you release the pressure, your little end of the leaf goes to a point. So I did add more of the lighter green color in there to get some variation in that. So it's not all gray green, so it kind of blends to that lighter green anyway. So same thing over here, curvy leaf that kind of goes to a point. And then, so to make this not look so flat, I'm actually going to go back with white and highlight the top part of the leaf. So let's make this one look like it's maybe overlapping. And then this part, highlighting that top part of the leaf. So now it doesn't look super flat. And I can go back and add dark, so a little tiny bit of black on the brush, and add a little bit of dark shadow on the bottom of the leaf. So now I have some highlights and shadows for my leaves. And then I can do the stem. So I can use number 8 round brush, but I'm twisting my brush this time because I know I have to do a thin line. I'm actually going to make this a little bit thicker as it attaches to the flower. But then the stem itself is going to get thinner as I paint down. So this part is a little bit thicker, this part thin, and we can decide if we want it to go over the leaves or behind the leaves. I'm going to take some white, go back up here so that part's kind of thin and kind of curves. I'm going to make the stem overlap my leaves, and then it goes down into the vase. Next, let's do the tulips. I'm going to load my palette with the color Primary Red, which is a red that if you mix white into it, it looks pink. So if you don't have primary red, use like a medium magenta, or you can change the color of your tulips to whatever color you want. I'm using the number 4 round brush, and I am just painting the little petal that's behind these 2 front petals. I'm going to load my palette with white. So the trick with these tulips is kind of altering our darks and lights for our petals. So I'm going to mix white into this primary red without rinsing my brush, and I'm going to do this petal over here on the right. So it's a little teardrop shape that is overlapping our back petal. Then I'm going to do the same thing and grab a little bit more white. So this is going to be brighter, and do this front petal that's overlapping all 3 of those. And it's just a little teardrop shape. And then I like to go back and I'm going to just define this a little bit better, but I'm going to add some dark into this. I'm going to grab my pink. I'm actually going to drag these darker colors up towards the bottom. So bottom, darker on the bottom, drag it up, and leave it bright and white, light color at the top. So with these tulips, you want to paint your back petals first and then your front petals last. So I'm going to do this again with these other 2 tulips. So let's start loading my brush in just the dark, just the primary red. And I'm going to do, these are both back petals, so it doesn't matter which one you do first. I'm going to do this back petal. So there's still a little bit of white on my brush. I'm getting some variation in that color, and that's okay. Take some of that dark, kind of drag it up. It's a little bit dark on the bottom. And then do the next back petal, same thing. So this is that dark little teardrop shape. Just the dark. I didn't load any more white on my brush at that point. And then do your center. So this time I loaded my brush in the white. So I have white and pink on my brush, or white and primary red on my brush. And I'm going to do that center part. So that will stand out because it's lighter and our back two petals are darker. So that's more of like an egg shape in there. I can drag more lighter color in there to get some really pretty color variation. So the trick is to not overblend your colors. And if I want, I can take a little bit of white. Maybe that petal over there is too dark. So I can maybe blend a teeny bit of white in there. Same with this one, but I don't want those petals to all be the same color, especially the one in the center should be either lighter or darker. Mine is lighter in the center. So same thing, same technique. Do your dark for this petal, pressing down firmly with the brush. So kind of light at first and then press down firm to create your kind of a thicker stroke. And then your second petal, and then your one in the center is going to overlap both of those, and that one's going to be lighter. So loading more white on the brush, but trying not to overblend those colors. And if I want a little bit more color variation in there, I can take dark and maybe blend some dark at the bottom. But I don't want all three of the petals to all be the same color. A little bit of white on this one, kind of blend that in gently, a little bit of light on that one, maybe kind of blend it in. But trying not to overdo it. And then I have my tulips. So let's rinse and do our tulip leaves. I love painting tulip leaves, they're so fun. So I'm going to use the light green permanent for this, and I'm actually going to add a little bit of yellow to my palette. So this is Cadmium Yellow Medium Hue. We'll need that yellow after this for our little yellow in the center of our iris. But let's use this yellow and mix equal parts yellow and green together and add some white in there. That is going to make a really pretty lime green color. I'm going to use my 8 round for this. So this is the 8 round brush. I'm going to mix this again, get my generous amount of paint on my brush. So green, yellow, and white to create that color. You might find that you want to add just a little bit of water to your brush. That could help with the flow of it. I'm not going to add water to my brush just yet. So I'm going to start out thin using the tip of the brush, and then I'm going to press down, and that's going to create my thicker part of my leaf. When you go to reload your brush, it's okay if you add different amounts of the color, or if you have to mix and it's not the same color. We get some really pretty color variation when that happens. I'm just going back and making the bottom part of that leaf thicker. So I'm going to do the same thing for each of those tulip leaves. I'll mix my colors, and we want to start the end of the leaf. So you can start on the base if that's easier, but I like to start thin and then press down harder to get your thicker stroke. So thin stroke, press down harder for the thicker stroke. And then we're going to do this again, thin, and then press down. So we have this leaf right here. I'm actually going to make sure that this is darker so it stands out. So kind of like what happened with the lily of the valley leaf when we had to make that part darker and shadowy. We can add some darker green in there. That's not that hard to do. Just add a little bit of dark green. If you need to mix dark green again by adding a little black in it, you can. So that stands out. Then I can take my white and even highlight this part of the leaf, and that'll really help that to stand out. So for the stems of the tulips, I'm going to go back to my number 4 round brush. I'm going to use the same colors, so my really pretty light spring green color, and twist the brush because I know I'm going to do thinner paint strokes. My stems are just kind of going a little bit wide at the base and then thin line down the middle. I'm going to do that to each of the tulip stems. This stem had to sway a little bit around that tulip. I didn't want to cover up any of the petals, but you can decide if you want to kind of overlap it differently and then touch up any leaves that maybe the stems aren't supposed to be overlapping, like this one. All right, so now let's assume our purple is dry, or if it's not dry, then wait for this to dry to do this step. But we want to add our yellow in the center to kind of give it that iris look in the flower. So I'm going to mix yellow and white together. If we used just yellow, it would not show up very well. So yellow and white mixed together using the number 4 round brush. And I'm just going to, on each of these petals, just kind of like do this narrow sort of yellow piece on the center part of the petal, and then adding a little bit more white to my brush for the very, very center, so it's a little bit brighter in the center. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm pretty much just going to do this to all of the petals. You can do it to just 3 of the petals if you want, or just 2. And then this one, just kind of dragging this yellow and white combination. So yellow and white on the brush, going from the center and just kind of dragging a little narrow area. It kind of branches out a little bit into the petals. So I'm going to take my white and go back and just make this a little bit brighter right in the middle. So on each of those, adding a little pop of extra white right in the center. It's going to really brighten the center of the flower. So then I'm going to take this a little step further. This is optional if you don't want to do this, but I'm going to take my number 8 round brush with the black and using just a little point of it. I'm going to do these like little black lines right in the center. Obviously, if that white right there in the center is saturated, don't do that because then it'll just kind of mix together. Gives you just a little bit of texture right in the center of the flower. And I'm going to take my dark purple. I'm just going to go back over the edges to make this super dark right on the edge of the petals. And kind of drag it in the center. And then I want to touch up this petal over here. Right here, it's overlapping that part of the stem. All right, that is it for our iris. So let's go ahead and paint the vases of this. And so you're welcome to change up colors and designs for your vases. I'm going to use my number 12 bright brush. So this is like a 1/2 inch flat brush, and using titanium white. And I'm going to go ahead and just paint this shape solid white. So this is going to have black stripes, but let's just paint everything white first. I'm just applying the paint with the intention to cover up this shape. I could use the tip of the brush to kind of outline the edge of it. I can use the full width of the brush to paint the bigger parts. It doesn't really matter the direction of your paint strokes. You're just painting this solid white, But when we do the black stripes, we will make the black stripes go in more of a curved direction, and that will give our vase a little bit more form and not make it look so flat. The center vase will be light blue permanent. We used this color earlier when we added some shading to our Lily of the Valley lilies. And so I didn't rinse the brush. I'm just using the blue with the white on the brush and painting this vase. So it should be mixing with the white and lighter, and it should be very opaque. You shouldn't have coverage issues with the light blue permanent. If you do, you can just add more white to your brush, or if you're changing the color of your vase, you might want to add white to whatever color you're using, or paint the vase white first, wait for the white to dry, and then going back over with your chosen color. That's another way you can get your colors to show up nice and bright against a black canvas. I'm going to switch to the number 4 round brush so that I can paint the opening, the little rim that is going to go around our flower. So I'm still using the blue, but I'm just using the brush to paint that little curved opening. So much easier to work with the smaller brush. A little bit of white, and maybe do like a little highlight on there. So letting that white just kind of blend with that blue so that stands out a little bit better. And there, I can drag a little bit of white over here down the side. We can highlight this later too. I'm going to add just a teeny bit of black to my brush and add maybe just a little bit of shadow under that rim. And we can kind of blend that in. I can take this brush again, just kind of drag it down. Gives it a little bit of darkness right under the opening of the vase. And then, so when these colored vases dry, then we can go back and add our designs to them. Next, I'm going to do the yellow vase. So get these colors all rinsed off of these brushes. And so for the yellow, let's use cadmium yellow medium mixed with titanium white. So you'll want to mix white into your yellow because yellow tends to be a translucent color. So adding that white in there will help that to be bright and show up against the dark background. I'm using the number 4 round brush, and I'm just basically going to paint this in. So to give this vase a little bit more dimension, I'm going to make my paint strokes go kind of curved going one way and curved going the other way, so in the direction of the shape. So these are going to kind of go this way. So see what happens when you don't add that white in there. So you want to make sure you add that white in there. So curved, curved, kind of outline the shape of the vase. And then these are going to curve this way. These are going to curve the opposite way. In the middle, the lines are kind of going more vertical. And then, so I'm kind of doing this on purpose. When I load the brush, I might grab different amounts of yellow and yellow white so that we have different variations of yellow for that vase. And just kind of letting them blend on the canvas. So these lines are just going to kind of meet down here at the bottom. Then we can paint the little base part of the vase. So this part right here kind of overlaps that bottom part. So I'm doing a little bit more white so that it stands out. So right here, curved bottom part of the vase, and then the part directly below it, that little stand part, is slightly darker. And then we can do the opening or the handle. We can make that like a different variation of the yellow, maybe a little bit lighter so that it stands out from the part that it's attached to. So before this dries, I'm actually going to add a little bit of highlight to this one. So with the white right here on the right side, just stroking down with that white and just kind of letting it gently blend. And then right here at the bottom part and the top part of the handle. So it gives it that little bit of a shiny look. And maybe a little bit on the opening. So next we're going to do the designs on the vases, and you want to make sure all those colors are dry before doing this step. So the stripes, I'm going to use the 12 bright brush and the color Mars Black. And I'm going to just use the width of the brush. So this brush is like half an inch wide. It's about how wide my stripes are going to be. Of course, you can change that to be thinner or thicker. But I want to make sure that my stripes are going in a curved direction, and that is going to give my vase a little bit more form because it's going to make it look like it's three-dimensional by making those lines go curved. So I'm going to do each of those lines. I'll have room for 4 lines. Then before this dries, I'm going to give it a little bit of a shiny highlighted look. So I'm going to grab white on my brush without rinsing, and I'm just going to drag a little bit of white into these stripes, mostly on the left, and just kind of let it blend itself into the rest of it. So just a little streak of white on these black stripes will give it a little bit of a highlight. Next, I'm going to do some wavy lines on the middle vase. So I'll be doing that with the color pink. So let's mix pink on our palettes. We have primary red and titanium white. Those two colors mixed together will make a pink. And I'll be using the number 4 round brush, so red and white. And then some very simple wavy lines for this vase. I'm pressing kind of firm with the brush to make these lines semi-thick. And also, when I go to reload, I might grab a different amount of that primary red and white. So maybe each of the stripes have like a slightly different color variation to them. Then I'm going to rinse my brush, and for the yellow vase, I'm going to do little spiral designs with the light blue color. So you might want to mix white into your light blue just so that it might show up better against our yellow. So I'm actually going to take more white on my palette, mix that with the light blue permanent color. And this is still the number 4 round brush, and I'm twisting it because I know I need all those bristles gathered together, doing small paint strokes here. So little spirals kind of all throughout this vase. So I'm going to do some of them to where they're like close to the edge. So how about like this one? We don't see the full spiral, but some of it's kind of going off the edge. And that'll give it more of a, maybe kind of a realistic look to the patterns. In this next step, I am going to be doing a little bit reflection under the vases. So I want to create like a very thin color. So this is the blue vase, the light blue color, but I want to thin it down. Oop, did not mean to grab purple in there. I want to thin it down with water. So it's going to be very loose because I want it to kind of look almost like a watercolor effect, because I'm going to be adding rain in the background. So I'm actually just taking the water, just kind of smoothing that out, little loose left and right paint strokes. And this is going to create some reflection under our vases. Give it some interesting water reflection because there's rain in the background. So if you're not doing rain in the background, you don't have to do this step. You can just kind of let it be simple with the plain background. You can even do like maybe a faux wood color on the bottom part that the vases are situated on. Kind of wipe the excess water off under the blue vase. So you're just kind of watering that paint color down to like a watercolor consistency, and then loosely painting left and right paint strokes under each of the vases, and that's creating kind of a fun reflective reflection from the color of the vase. So I can take my white, loosely water that down under the white, very loose left and right paint strokes. You want a lot of that black to still be showing through, so you want it to be very translucent. And then, so throughout this area, so that line that we drew in the beginning, that's kind of our end line. So everything above that might be the sky, or maybe the wall behind it if it's on a table. But I'm just kind of, I outlined that line again very loosely with the white paint, and this is the number 4 round brush still. And I'm just going to kind of loosely add some left and right water lines in there without overpowering it. We still want much of that background to be still black. So some very loose, wavy, kind of wiggly water lines in there. Maybe a little pop more of yellow under the yellow vase. And then we're going to be painting raindrops in the sky, which is kind of fun. Optional if you don't want to do this. And then some of these raindrops will turn into little droplets that might be landing on the leaves or on the ground, so we could have fun with that. Add a little pop of blue reflection under the vase. And maybe there's a little pop of pink in there too. So then we can start painting our raindrops. And let's rinse the brush off, and we're going to use just titanium white for the raindrops. So I'm just going to load the tip of the brush in the white. So I'm going to start by doing like a little teardrop shape with the pointed part pointing upwards. So it's a little rounded at the bottom, and then like a little line pointing up. And then I'll just kind of add little raindrops all throughout the background, using that same sort of concept, the little droplet being larger at the bottom and then thinner at the top. Some of these raindrops might be hitting the ground. So if that's the case, we can do little ripples around the droplet to make it look like it's splashing. So that's kind of a fun thing you can do to several of these drops that are hitting the ground. If you want to do little droplets on some of the leaves, you can do like a little tiny half circle solid white droplet. So I'm going to do those on some of these leaves, and you can also put one on a petal. So I'm going to put one on one of the iris petals. So that looks kind of flat. So if you want to have that be a little more three-dimensional, grab some black on your brush and outline or add black just on the bottom part of each of the droplets. So you're just kind of outlining just the bottom edge of your droplet. So that's enough to give it a little bit of shadow. I'm going to take the iris one a little step further and grab my purple and just kind of put a little bit of purple in that droplet, and that's enough to create some reflection from the petal into the droplet. I'm going to add more raindrops kind of scattered throughout the background, maybe a few more dropping on the ground area. And the one last final touch up I'm going to do is add a highlight to this vase just with titanium white. So a little curved line kind of in the middle. It's a little bit thicker at the bottom, and then it goes thinner towards the top. And that is it. This is the conclusion of how to paint spring blooms. Hope you enjoyed this one. Thanks for watching, and thanks for painting with me.